All right, so we're going to get back to the Honda CL70. We kind of put this to the side for a little bit because we've been working on the KDX 200, but I'm waiting for parts on that, and I really do want to get this complete. Believe it or not, we're really close to having it be done, and we're going to do a first start on it, and come to find out we didn't have spark, so I started troubleshooting that. I ended up finding a new condenser for it, which is like a little tiny capacitor, about yay big. And I soldered that onto the coil, and then we dived into the KDX, so I never got back to this. But I do want to complete this so I can figure out what I'm doing with it. Cute little bike. Thinking we may want to keep it, but probably should sell this one, so we got some money coming in to finish the KDX, but we'll see. But anyhow, I did some repairs on the wiring, and I did good solid repairs like I always do, but if you saw any of these videos, this is a low mileage, all original bike, and I decided I want to clean up the wiring a little bit better, and I want to use the actual correct terminals for it. So I went ahead and ordered all that stuff, so I figured I'll make a video on that and show you guys how to do that. Alright, so here's the connectors we're going to use. I got these through Vintage Connections. You can find them online, and these are pretty much identical to the original connections that were done at the factory back in the 70s. These are the shields or the covers. You slide them on first, you do your crimp, and then you slide them over, obviously. I also picked up the proper color wire to do the repairs. I try not to just use generic wire when I'm doing a repair on a bike like this, especially if you're doing a restoration, or if it's a survivor bike. You don't want to just use plain black wire or whatever. Down the road, somebody's trying to make heads or tails of something, they'll get lost real quick. So if you're doing a real restoration or something close to it, if you can stick with the original colors, that's the way to go. So anyway, that's the stuff. Those are the crimpers that we have to use. So I'm going to get over there, get set up, and kind of walk you guys through this. And if you're not familiar with working with the wiring, I know some people get intimidated by the wiring diagrams. When you take your time and look at everything, it's really not that hard. You just got to look at the color codes. They usually give you a chart, tells you, what these letters stand for. So anyway, I'm going to get set up and we'll start walking through this. All right, so I got the print taped on the bike, and I got it set up in a way, when I'm looking at the print, it's basically the way that the bike is laid out. So in other words, here's the front of the print. That's the headlight. Our tail lights and directionals and everything are obviously in the back. So anyway, that's the way I lay it out. So when you're looking at these prints, you basically, on these old Hondas, you have a couple places where most of your connections are. One is obviously here in the side compartment, and another place you got a bunch of connections is up in the headlight bucket. So there's your headlight bucket. These connections here are the ones that are inside the headlight bucket. When they draw these prints, there's no way they can get all that inside of there. So that's basically representing what's inside this headlight bucket. These connections here, all these like rectangle shapes, those are basically these here. So anyway, get that laid out like that. What I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to remove this wiring harness. I got everything disconnected already. You can see my red with the white tracer, my green, the gray. Those are the ones that were messed up in this harness. If you wanted to, you could basically strip your wires, strip your new wire, and you could solder here, extend a few inch piece of wire or whatever, then crimp on your new connection and call it a day. I'm going as far as putting on all these correct connections. I'm actually going to take this wiring harness out, undo the tape, run new wires in so I don't have any solder connections, and then basically retape it up and redo my wiring harness. It's going to be a little bit more work. We've got to pull it out of here, disconnect everything in the headlight bucket. But again, I'm going this far. I'm gonna do it right. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and get that pulled out, and be back in a bit. All right, so there's a look inside the headlight bucket. That's our new headlight. That's a new old stock headlight. I'm going to get that out of there before I break that. $60. So there's all our connections. So basically, everything in here is good. No mice got inside of here. So I'm going to go ahead, disconnect everything inside of here, and pull that wiring harness out. All right, so we're going to start stripping off this old tape, getting set up to put our new wires in here. I think there's like 4 of them that we actually have to change. The ones that are good, they have the original ends on them. There's nothing wrong with them. There's obviously no reason to change them out. So we're going to take our razor knife and we're going to cut very easily, cut the tape off and peel that off. Obviously, common sense, don't dig into that too far because we are reusing some of the wires. You don't want to cut into them and cause bigger issues. This piece on the end here, it's like a plastic sleeve that they slide on here. I ordered the correct stuff. It finally came in. Wasn't sure what size it was, so I got the 2 most common sizes. I think it's the smaller one. Pretty sure it's that one. But it's not shrink tube. It's actually sleeving. I don't know. That's like a 6-inch piece or whatever. So we have that now. And I also have the correct tape. You can get this through that vintage connections that I was talking about. You might think, hey, that's regular electrical tape. And kind of the same thing. I'm actually an electrician by trade. I do this as a hobby, the dirt bikes and motorcycles. But anyway, I'm an electrician by trade, so obviously I use a lot of electrical tape. You could use electrical tape. If you're going to do that, definitely get the good 3M stuff. It's like $6 a roll. I think this was like $7, but I don't know what they're calling this, Elliott tape. This stuff here is actually not quite as sticky as electrical tape, and this is the stuff they use to make the actual wiring harnesses at the factory. So if you want to be really correct, I mean, not that anybody's going to really know the difference, but it's pretty much the same price as the good electrical tape. So I'm going to start cutting this off. Okay, so something I found in here, you have 2 black wires right here. I don't know if you can see that on camera. It's actually 2 wires there. You can see how I can separate them. So I got to look at the print. That may be the main power wire. So basically they're sending 1 wire up and they split it here to come to here, and that's for your ignition switch. And then they're going up here to the headlight to feed it up there. So kind of almost looks like it was somebody did some kind of repair or something somewhere down the road, but I don't believe that's true. I think that's actually from the factory. For whatever reason, they ran the 1 wire here, bring it there, and bring it there. So we're going to have to redo that because unfortunately the black wire is one of the ones I have to change. This end's good, but the other end here is one of the broken ones. So I'm going to have to duplicate what they did here, so I'll end up cutting that tape off that they have there. And I'm assuming that they just soldered that, but we'll find out. Alright, so I found something interesting here. Once I took that brown tape off, there's their solder joint, and that's pretty typical of how they did their soldering back then. They take the 1 wire, twist it around, and solder it, basically. But the strange thing is once I took that tape off, I started pulling on this a little bit for some reason, and this wire pulled out of here. Now, you can see how long this is. So this wire actually had a break in it. Somewhere is right around here. And I can feel that there's, you can see there's no wire there in this part here, because that's where that pulled out. But anyway, so there's something that was probably been a problem for a long time. I can tell it looked like somebody 40 years ago, because that's the last time this thing ran. I'm sure they had an issue with this. They must have been having lighting issues or whatever, but that's really strange because it's a nice clean break. Don't know what caused that, but glad we found it while we're in here. So I'm going to be checking the rest of these and give them all a little bit of a pull and see see what the deal is. All right, so we got the rest of that tape off. Found a couple more things here that I want to mention. This green wire with the yellow stripe, same thing here. It's got a solder point like we found with the black wire that I just showed you. That goes off to two green with yellow stripe. These are the ends that were in the side panel of the motorcycle. So again, I believe that's factory. I could probably tell a little bit better from the print. This threw me off a little bit. This is the pink, blue, and red with white stripe. Again, these would be the ends that were in the side panel. I don't know, a couple inches into the wiring harness or whatever. There's this black tape, and again, it looks like another solder joint here with that brown tape. So that was kind of bizarre to me at first. I'm like, why did it got the three colors together? And you know, at first I thought something broke off of here. I was like, that's really bizarre. But I took a look at the print, and I think I understand what's going on here now. I think this is just a joint. I think these three wires are supposed to go together like that. I think it's soldered, and again, pretty sure that's factory. I'm going to do a little more investigation. A lot of my experiences with the 80s dirt bikes and ATVs. I'm getting into the older stuff now, especially the Hondas. I like them. They're fun to work on. So I've worked on them before, but this is definitely something I haven't seen before. So anyway, if you look here, I'm trying to figure out that situation here. If you look at the print here, the P, that's for the pink wire. I don't know if you're seeing that on here. So pink wire goes to the rectifier. It's also got the red and white wire, and that goes to the rectifier. And then we got our blue wire, which splits off. One goes to the, looks like the ignition coil, if I'm looking at that right. And the other blue wire, looks like it's going to the AC generator. I'll hold that up there so you can see what I'm talking about, hopefully. You can screenshot that if you wanted to, if you were doing this to work on yours. So, the way this print's showing it, I always wondered, I was looking at the print, I was wondering why this is dead-ended, not going anywhere, and the red and white not going anywhere. So that kind of makes sense now. The print's really not showing it as a connection, but I think that's what they're trying to show on this print. So, if anybody knows any different, you know, somebody's got a little more knowledge on these old Hondas, definitely comment below. I'd be interested in your opinion, but I'm going to verify all that. I mean, somebody did that at one point, whether it was the factory or somebody trying to repair something, but I do believe that that's the way it's supposed to be, and again, it has to do with the rectifier, so it probably makes some sense. So anyway, I'm going to confirm a couple things. I'm going to check all my wires, because we had this black wire that was broke. I'm sure that was giving somebody a headache at one time. In fact, the headlight was disconnected when I got the bike, so I'm thinking they had a headlight issue, and that was obviously it. So anyway, going to check it out, do a little more research. I just want to make sure that everything's correct the way I think it is, and going to get the replacement wires. There's 3 or 4 colors I got to change. I was short the orange. That finally came in the other day. I'm going to replace the orange wire, obviously. That had a bad end on it. So anyway, I'm going to get set up, and I'll be back in a little bit. All right, so I'm going to work on this guy here. This is the one where my one wire was damaged. So the pink, the blue, and the red with the white stripe all go together. I haven't had this off yet, but underneath here it's going to be soldered. So we're going to get the tape off, desolder it, take our new wire that I just made up, and get that to the correct length, and then solder that in and tape it back up, and that part should be good. All right, so to my surprise, when I undid this, they're all just separately taped off. So, where's my print? So I talked about this earlier in the video. That's basically, get this the right way. Hopefully you're seeing that. But there's the blue wire. It's just showing it dead-ended. Pink wire dead-ended. And then the red and white wire dead-ended. So I believe that to be stock. I got to be honest, I'm actually an electrician by trade, but I'm not an electronics guy. And I know that has to do with the rectifier, so I don't really understand what a dead-ended wire is supposed to do, unless that was for an option on these bikes or something, and when they didn't use it, they just taped them off. So if anybody knows different on that, I'm definitely not the expert on this part. You know, chime in down below. Maybe somebody can help us out. But I do believe that to be factory. In fact, I have no concern that it's not factory, especially because they're showing it that way on the print. So I'm just going to duplicate what they did. Like I said, I don't get it as an electrician. A wire going to nowhere does nothing. So again, maybe it was an option thing or something. They didn't use them on particular bikes. I can't imagine what option that would have been, or if that even makes any sense. But anyway, if you guys run into this, you know, I just want to include it on here. You know, I definitely don't know everything about everything with these bikes, so I'm definitely willing to learn. So, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and just fix this up and get the wire and harness back together. All right, so I'm going to start getting ready to replace some of these wires that are short because they're damaged on the end. We're going to start with our orange wire. That's this guy here. This one happens to have a 3-port on it. So in other words, 3 other wires are going to plug into this fitting. I do have new fitting for that, so I can make a brand new wire for it and the cover. So I'm going to go ahead and get that crimped onto the new wire, and then we'll get that set in place. All right, so there's our end crimped on there. Basically, when you do these, you want to make sure that these tabs on the end, they actually roll over the insulation, and then inside of here, you want it to roll over the copper wire itself. Makes for a nice tight connection. They're a little tricky when you first start making them. You got to have this tool. I haven't done a ton of them. If I get better at it, I'll make a video on it. Now you got your protective sleeve. So you want to slide that guy down the other end of the wire. And that's that. When we make our connections later inside the air box, well, the battery compartment really, this is where everything will plug into. All right, so here's our old orange wire that we're going to be removing. So we want to cut this to the same size, obviously. So just kind of follow it along inside your wire and harness here. And there's the other end of our bad one. Obviously this is short now, so we don't want to cut it to that length, or we'd be defeating the purpose. So we want to go pretty much to the length of these ones that are still in good shape. So that's right about there. I'm going to leave a little bit extra, and we'll cut that down. All right, so there's our other end crimped on there. Same thing. Again, you want to crimp that around your insulation on the end, and then your copper is going to be in there. Got to slide your sleeve on ahead of time. All right, so all said and done, this is what we have. That's the two ends, and that's the wire cut to the proper length for the wiring harness. So now this guy will be ready to get taped into the harness, but we're going to get all of them done first. Once we get them all done, then we're going to put everything together and tape up our new harness. All right, so I'm going to demonstrate crimping one of these fittings. Hopefully you're seeing that there. So the outer tabs, that's the part that's going to roll over your insulation. And I'll call these the inner tabs there in the center. That's what's going to roll over your copper. Hopefully you're seeing that. So go ahead, get your piece of wire, slide your insulator, your cover on first. Get that out of your way. I already have this stripped, but take your cable strippers. This is 18 gauge, so obviously go to 18 gauge on your strippers. And I'm just stripping off, I don't know, maybe that's like a 1/4 inch, give or take. So once you have that ready, get your tool. What I find best is to start with the largest one here and start crimping it that way, and then work your way to the smaller size. Now get that guy set in there. Just get it started just a little bit. And hopefully you can see that I have that flush. The back end of that is flush with the tool. Hopefully you can see that at that angle. You don't want it too far in, and you don't want it too far out. You want to get it just where it's flush. Alright, so now we're going to take our wire, and we're going to set this in. And remember, you want the insulated part to wrap around the outer tabs. So make sure you're sticking that in just the right amount. Crimp it till it releases. And be careful here, because at this point it's not really crimped all the way because that's the larger size. But you can see it started to do a nice crimp already. Alright, so now we're going to take our tool again, and now we're going to go into the center position. You want to get that lined up exactly like you had it before. Again, flush with the outside of the tool. Go ahead and give that a full crimp till it releases. See if we can get a good look at that. So there you go. And hopefully you'll see here, get something to point with here. Again, these outer tabs are crimped around the insulation, and then this inner part right here is crimped around the copper. And you can see some of your strands there at the end sticking into here a little bit. Again, be careful how much is sticking in there. You don't want it really too long. But that's what it's going to look like all said and done. And that makes for a nice connection. You're not going to be able to pull that apart. Alright, so I have all my new wires set in here that I just made up. So what I'm going to do now is remove all the bad ones from here, color for color, and then we'll combine the old wires that we're reusing, because there's nothing wrong with them, with the new wires, and then we'll start taping up. So these are the old wires that are still good, and these are all the bad wires. And this is the new partial harness that we just made up to replace these. So now we're going to combine these, and we're going to just set these to the side for now in case we need to reference them. So now we can start working with that. Alright, so there's the wiring harness all finished up. Those are ignition wires. Again, all new ends that were bad. The ones that were good, we kept. Same thing on this end. All new ends where they need it to be. New wires going all the way through, so we don't have any solder points anywhere, except the factory ones. They have one for the black wire. It splits off 3 places. But yeah, so that's pretty much it in a nutshell. That's it. Hopefully that helped somebody. And there's another shot at the print if you need it. That's it.